They often say there's more than one way up the mountain. The Ronin usually chooses the road less traveled. It is often a lonely road and often a dangerous road, but it is the most rewarding in terms of what you find out about yourself and those around you. This is where we discuss the trials, tribulations, and methods that those Ronin use to overcome those obstacles on their way to Ronin Code.
So we are back, Ep.4. I have two of my amazing friends with me, Miss Miatrai Brown, Miss Nina Gloster. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves, tell them what you do. Nina?
Oh, I am a film and television writer.
Sweet.
That's about it, here in Los Angeles, California.
Right. One of those things that is essential to have somebody who is you in the room for, which is exactly why I have you here. And Miatrai?
Yeah, I'm a corporate immigration attorney in the Washington, D.C. area.
Right. Now, the whole point behind this show is to highlight how similar ideologies and necessary conversations exist in various worlds. Because as we were discussing a little while ago, creating divides amongst ourselves in various environments does nothing to push an overall positive agenda. I mean that to say, if what we're trying to do is increase the amount of influence of people who are represented in certain spaces, you have to have those people in the room. You being a writer, you being an immigration attorney, those are equally important for you to be the person doing that, even though they don't have anything to do with each other, right? Nina, as a writer, specifically penning stories that have to do with people who do as well as don't look like you, I know there has been recently much more attention given to the idea of having Black women in the room, specifically to tell their own stories so we don't get what was interesting to me, which is a comment I saw from someone about how, 20 years from now, if they do a movie about the whole Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, it's going to be how this white cop turned around and decided to help join the fight and really saved everything, which unfortunately is the way a lot of Black stories go. It always somehow has to not involve us helping ourselves out of spaces. It always has to be some version of that. So you're in a position to directly affect that and also have those conversations. How do you think that has transformed the way you work, or do you see that becoming something that is valued a lot higher?
I don't think it's transformed the way I work. I think I work because of that. So right. I think I chose to become in this field to help implement that type of change. Because, and you think about Nina Simone has said it, James Baldwin has said it, Langston Hughes has said it, but art should reflect the times in each of the different ways that they've kind of verbalized and communicated that. But when you think about it, and of course you think about the evolution of how America was discovered and colonized, but when you think about it, going back, if you think about the television industry or the film industry, the first Oscar for that a Black woman ever won was for Gone with the Wind, and we know what that depiction was. And it's always the movies like The Help, and those are the ones that they want to see us win in. Those are the roles that they will allow for us. So it's not only important to have people like me, but I think a lot of what people don't understand, other than just having directors and writers, are the executives of these studios and production companies. Because a lot of the time, I saw a meme that was talking about what corporations were supporting and boycotting, and these companies are making these very bold statements right now, but their leadership doesn't reflect any of that. And it's kind of a put your money where your mouth is type of thing, and that kind of translates into every industry. But I think the one misconception about film and television is that just as long as we can have writers and directors, that will be better off. And we just did this, they did a spread last year in the Hollywood Reporter that I was graciously invited to be a part of, but it was 62 Black women television writers, and the headline was something about we don't want to hear that you can't find Black women to be stacked on your show, because here are literally 62. That's just 62 of the Black women who we were able to get to come to this photo shoot today. So it's just, it's there's no excuse. And I think that's just a misconception. But just like these corporations, just like we have to demand that these corporations hire leadership of color, it's the same with like studio executives, because those are the people that are really making the decisions. I can pitch 5 different amazing coming of age Black films, but unless a studio executive is going to fund the film for me,
right,
it's not going to really make real change. So obviously there are some writers and directors doing amazing things, but I think that that's just one misconception of what we also need to demand in this industry.
Miatrai, I want to start out with you because I actually saw a tweet the other day about a young woman who had just graduated. She's like first generation, and now she's defending immigration in court, right? And it made me automatically think about it, because I was like, she is now better suited to defend something she's experienced than anyone else who probably works with her at this point. And that's really, really necessary, because you can only do so much without the personal experience becoming the more superseding factor, right? Mm-hmm. Like they complain about the record industry and how most of the executives are old white dudes trying to dictate Black culture. And that's just seen in so many things, that shows like Insecure have come out to be able to be as authentic as possible to people's experiences, but there just needs to be more of it. And right now there needs to be more of it on a much more grand scale. So Miatrai, specifically with you, as that goes, how do you think that affected your decision to pursue your career, but also like, how do you see that becoming an important factor in your like day-to-day?
So with regard to the story you just told about, the girl who started defending in court, for her, that is very authentic to where, she came from. She went through the immigration system and, came out the other side as either a green card holder or a citizen. So for her, that is probably something that she holds true, like to her heart. I feel like authenticity is so important because it incubates higher thought, better quality of, being able to defend your clients, and, adds creativity and value. I know for me, I chose immigration because of my experiences. And my experiences were just traveling around the world as, a younger person, for sports and to volunteer. And through that, I guess I found that cultural exchange, intellectual exchange is just so important. Diversity is so important. Authenticity is so important, that I chose this path of immigration. So for me, it definitely tailored, what I, wanted to do with my life, because I tend to be a little more, I'm more of a thinker. So I'll just, kind of go deep into myself and think about, what do I enjoy, and what do I find important? And that's definitely driven me to do immigration.
Sweet. That brought up a really interesting point to me, because when we talk about solutions, I feel like we often add complexities in that don't need to be there. I've been lucky enough to have conversations with some CEOs. Case in point, I talk to Tim Chi all the time. I reference that dude all the time because he's one of my favorite people in the world. I've gotten really close to his family. So he's the CEO for Wedding Wire, which is now Not Worldwide, the guy who runs the whole thing, right? But he is Chinese American. And it's interesting because we were discussing how he tries to implement things that promote diversity within his own business and amongst the companies, but also how difficult it is because of what you said, not getting other people who are in as high of positions to try to open themselves to exactly how to get that done.
And kind of to piggyback off of that, with what she said, with regard to like board of directors, I agree that a lot of them aren't diverse at all. Right. And if they do have some type of diversity, it's maybe one Black American who is in the diversity role.
That's 100% it. I actually was crazy because I saw a screenshot, or I took a screenshot of somebody posting up all these different companies and of all the different like C-level executives and all the different people they had making decisions, but then how many of those people were actually like a person of color or a black person? Because one of the things I definitely don't agree with is that person of color and black person are interchangeable, because there are uniquely black experiences in this country and there are person of color experiences in this country, and they're just not the same. But that is exactly where I was going to go with that. The problem is you have these companies that start out from a foundation without said voices in the room. So as they build and grow, as Tim was alluding to, it's like you want to have a conversation about a topic, but like you don't have to have a conversation about a topic. You can just go find the person who has experience. And if you have the person who has experience in the room, you can just ask them and they would literally tell you. And then you can get the authentic version of what needs to happen, and it's a much more concise and effective way of doing anything about it. And I found that really interesting because, of course, that came from one of his black women employees. He was just like, the solution isn't difficult, just ask the person who is necessary to give you the answer.
We have all the answers.
I mean, it's really not that, like, it's honestly just, it's sad because it does show a complacency with the idea that things always have to be a mountain to move. Right, like we may be.
Well, also it's a like a not relinquishing that control.
Yeah,
it's like we'll do all of this. We'll go through hell and high water to give you this, but you can't have this.
Right. Like, and that's the sad part, which is why things kind of perpetuate down this like ridiculous path. So case in point with you guys, because again, you're in spaces where, let's say if you're in a room, out of 10 people, maybe 2 people, one may look like you, one may be Hispanic, just so they can fit the quota. And how do those conversations in that type of environment go? Like, how is it dealing with, like, okay, I'll just use myself for example real quick. I train people who are well off, right? Wealthy people in different positions who run these different companies. The uniqueness of me as a black man being able to have a conversation with them is extremely important, and I don't take that lightly, right? So if I have the dude who's the financial advisor at JP Morgan and senior and he says, well, I didn't vote. My conversation to him is like, bro, that's because your life's not gonna change, right? That's not something he thinks about. He may think that he's just not doing something, but I have to be like, all right, so you're the 18 to 40-year-old white male in America. Your life doesn't change depending on who's running the country. It just doesn't. Nothing actually changes for you any day of the week. And I was like, you got to realize, Steve, the next time you get an opportunity, think about the fact that you're not just voting for a self-interest, or if you think you are, you just have to come to terms with the fact that you're a selfish dude. Like, there's no way around that. So I can only imagine if I was in a company where I wasn't the majority voice, how those conversations go. Miatrai, we talked about it a little bit. How is it working through those things and trying to navigate being like authentic to what you really want to talk about, but also trying to make it a way that's palatable for people who aren't necessarily understanding your background?
Yeah, you have to be very tactful with how you speak. You can't say the B word, and black.
Black. That's why I'm saying color, right? That's become the new thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So, they want to be open and they want to, they care, but they're just not around enough Black people or people of color to really understand, what's going on. So when you do talk, to others, you kind of have to speak on a gradient. You can't go 100 with somebody who just doesn't understand the issues and isn't aware of the issues. Honestly, myself, I feel like I've been learning so much more about the Black community that I didn't even know. And so, yeah, people are just on different levels of understanding, and you just kind of have to meet them where they are. And, not like it's your duty to do this, but kind of work with them.
Right.
And hopefully, make a change.
Now, Nina, this is interesting because I was thinking about it the other day in terms of kind of what you were just saying. You're dealing with an audience that may not necessarily have the background information, but then also you have to deal with people who, on top of that, somehow still believe they know enough, right? So like when you're the person there who has to tell the story and has to be the person as the go-between, What do you feel like is the main focus for you when you're trying to communicate these ideas creatively, as well as just in your day-to-day interactions?
Well, I applaud you because I no longer desire to make anything palatable. Like I've gone through that, but that's the luxury that my career has afforded me, because obviously you're in law, and that you don't have that luxury. Like you're really on the front lines. And I think but that was a journey that I came to, because when I first started, of course, as a woman and as a Black person, when you get into your first room, if you're so lucky to even be around other people that look like you. Luckily, I've had both experiences. I've been in a room that was not very diverse, and it felt like and not very diverse, reflecting a show that is very diverse.
Right.
So you'd be very surprised with how that works. But anyway, I've been in a place where I've been like having to hold my tongue, and even after work, going to the showrunner and like expressing some of my feelings. But at this point, luckily, I'm in a place, I say what the fuck I want, and I don't make anything palatable. And I'm usually kind of known for that in the room. Like I'm known for the one who's calling out, like,
is that
the race, the gender, the socioeconomic, they know that I don't bite my tongue, but right. I am lucky to be in an industry where I can even do that, because sometimes, not only an industry, some rooms, some shows don't have that environment, don't allow that type of culture in their workplace. So that's also a very much strategic when I am deciding what type of job I'm accepting, because I'm also having to question, what do I want to compromise? Like, yes, this pays so much, but what am I compromising in turn? Or what am I able to change in this room? What am I able to bring? So but I don't make anything palatable.
No, I feel it. Okay, so the reason I'm going to piggyback on that is because I think you brought up a really, really good point. Both of you, like between the two of you, right? Like on one hand, to push a conversation forward does require consideration of the ears it's landing on. But then at some point it switches to being unapologetic in the delivery of the message. Like it's a balancing act, and it definitely exists differently in the different worlds that you're in. And I think it requires all of those different sides to really make something happen. And it's interesting because, as you alluded to, Nina, it's like, depending on the industry you're in, there's certain ways of getting conversations brought up and getting things explained that is more productive. Like,
yes. And don't get me wrong, because although I have been very outspoken and offended a lot of people when I was like working in a room, I also have to, of course, because like I went to Spelman, and this is ingrained in us before we graduate. But it's like I'm constantly having to make sure that, though I'm not trying to make what I'm thinking palatable, I have to ensure that I don't come off sounding like an angry Black woman. Like that's always good. Like as a woman and as a Black person, that's just something you're carrying no matter what. It's just the burden that we're going to carry no matter what industry you're in. So although like I've become very unapologetic and I have been known to like speak my mind, I do have to like check my tone. I do have to make sure that I don't come off sounding crazy, and because they're going to give you, listen, if you give them any reason, it can go left.
Now,
real quick.
What's interesting about it is like you're one of the few people, and the reason why I have like maintained a reason to at least keep contact with you is you're one of the few people I know who can balance those two things well. Like you have this outrageous level of calm about whatever the topic of discussion is, but like you can feel your presence when you talk, which, part of this is, as an attorney, I feel like that has to bode well for when you're really trying to get something across to a somewhat unreceptive audience. I mean, this country has notably not been the most receptive to a group of people we'll call immigrants, because it can come from anywhere. For a country that is literally built off the backs of people coming from different places and nothing but a melting pot of cultures anyway, like there's no real American
from different
culture.
places.
Yeah, like there's no real American culture, right? Like, I mean, come on. But like at the same time, how do you go about trying to maintain those two things? Because I mean, I've heard once or twice where I could tell, I was like, oh shit, she meant that. Like when she said something, I was like, oh, that joint, that don't talk to me. And I was like, gosh. I mean, like, is that something that you are purposeful in practicing? Or do you feel like that's something that Nina was talking about? You kind of have built a subconscious ability for, because we have so many things we have to consider, right? Like the angry black man and the angry black woman as a stereotype are vastly different. And I'm frustrated a lot of times because I even see black dudes talking about the angry black woman. And when I make comments on male and female interactions, I'm very clear to just say people, because it is not a male woman, black woman, black. There's a lot of stuff that's just a people problem. So Miatrai, being the lady who is always so calm, collected, but also a full-blown male, is that a practice thing? Is that something you're conscious of trying to do?
I didn't realize that. I think just generally, I tend to be a calm and reserved person. I definitely have very strong feelings about certain things. So I guess when I speak, sometimes it comes off a certain way.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. I mean, like, case in point, this is why you're the person who should be the immigration attorney. I mean, seriously, it can't be me. Like, there's certain things that I should not be doing. I should not hit service industries, because even though I know I didn't mess up your order, if you come at me wrong, we're going to have that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just know that about myself. And some of it comes to that.
No, I feel like the only time I'm really going to yell is like on the basketball court, or like.
There it is.
Boyfriend, maybe? I don't know.
That competitiveness. Okay.
I feel like I just learned that people tend to be more receptive when you're actively listening and trying to understand from their side. And it's not something I do to like manipulate or anything like that. I think it's because I am an immigration attorney. I'm just used to hearing everyone's side of the story. So like, I'm trying to help. So I think I probably just generally use that in life. So when I do talk to people, and when I am very, when I feel strongly about something.
Good at it. Don't worry. You're good at it. Very, very good at it. You're intimidated more than.
That was a good question.
No, it's okay, because these are things I think about, right? Like, so the one thing we all share is our ability to communicate is top priority. I mean, that's very true in daily life, but for me, right? Like, I'm trying to get people past a point that they don't know they can overcome yet. And physical pain is a very real threshold that is very hard to cross without a very real reason for it. For you, Miatrai, right, there's this psychological effect of the person you're trying to help, and also the establishment that has been pushing back so hard against them. For you, Nina, it's the same thing, right? Like, the very person you're trying to have a voice for, you also have to make sure you're communicating that in a way that makes that voice heard, and not just pushed to the side and or go in a different route with somebody who's a little bit this way or that way. And I guess now we're just getting to the point where I just want to get kind of opinions on certain topics, because the black man, black woman conversation specifically that has been going on, especially now, we're in this like horrible trauma Olympics that's happening, where it's like, you know, black people in general have been treated bad in this country, right? But there's also a very, very real hierarchy and patriarchy that's existed among cultures since the beginning of time, where it's like, there's the men of that culture, then the women of that culture. So if you just tell yourself that if black people are unanimously agreed upon as being the lower culture amongst people around the globe, then obviously black women are the more subjugated of that culture in the first place. So that's like, shouldn't even be up for debate, but it is. how do we have in your...
I just had this debate with my husband, by the way, like
Really?
a couple days ago. That's the thing that you don't have to deal with as a Black man. You don't have to decide what's going to take a back seat at times. You don't have to say, my gender is going to take a back seat to race right now because my race needs me.
And that's the issue. Yeah. And that's the issue. Because then how do you like I told somebody before, if we're going to actually make progress, it does require a unified movement.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened today. With it's like Black women are always the ones at the end of the day still there fighting for our Black men, our Black women, and it's not always reciprocated. Like even today, we're trying to acknowledge the death of I didn't even figure out how to pronounce her name yet, but I just posted her on my Instagram. But like it's so disheartening. Yes, thank you. It's so disheartening feeling like you know we're fighting for our people, we're fighting for our Black men time and time again, not feeling that same love reciprocated.
Right. And my thing that I've been in that exact same situation where I was the person like I should help this person out, but I can't have that person necessarily just trust that scenario.
And it's a bittersweet time because we're seeing like the ugliest of the ugly right now, but we're also seeing like humanity a little bit more emboldened. So it's just like, it's so twofold. It's crazy.
And then another thing you want to think about is she may not trust you, but also like, who are you inviting into your car? So
right. Like the world is just so incredibly crazy. Like I actually just enjoy being able to put people into better situations because if you don't collectively do that, it's never going to fucking happen. But you're right. It's like, damn, I got to think now, like, damn, is this person who they say they are? If they hop into my whip and I want to give them a ride, and therefore she has to think, well, is this dude who he said? And it's like, if we get to a point, which is sadly seeming closer and closer to being reality, where we just can't trust each other at all, humanity breaks down. Yeah. I mean, like, we just have to be able to believe some things, but there has to be enough examples of it. And right now, there just aren't enough examples of it going the right way. But it's like, that doesn't happen enough amongst a varying group of people for it to be a collective experience.
But also, you need to think, but also, like, I would kind of take into consideration, like, what is the news trying to promote? Is it trying to promote fear? Is it trying to promote, you know, people kind of going away from each other or like converging? Like, what are they trying to promote?
Exactly. That's the issue. And we have like nothing but trauma bonding going on right now.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's nothing but pure trauma. So like,
and it's crazy to see the different like networks agendas. Like everyone has a different agenda, and you can see they're like very staunchly different. Like if you watch CNN, if you watch Fox, if you just, it's crazy.
And it's the thing is amazing to me is I wonder now. I had to start wondering because I always praise Twitter for being such an essential service right now. Like if it wasn't for Twitter, we just wouldn't have 90% of this information. We wouldn't be hearing about these dudes being hung. We wouldn't be hearing about this 11 girls experience, or you'd be hearing the watered down version, right? And Twitter is